Okay, my name's Bob Buecher. I've been a caver for 50-some years. And this is a little presentation on a project that I started when I first started caving and have been working on, off and on, for 50 years. So a lot of people might not know, but one of my lifelong interests has been astronomy, astrophotography, and it's what originally brought me from Rhode Island to Arizona. So 50 years ago, I was in library at the U of A reading up on astronomy, and in particular on the Barbershop meteor crater in Arizona, you know, a natural wonder, a mile across. And reading through this book, I discover that nearby meteor crater are also some other craters. And originally, when they were discovered, they were thought to be part of the meteor strike for meteor crater. And this book talks about it, showed an aerial photograph showing numerous craters. But then they say, the caveat is, but these are not meteor craters, they're just simple sinkholes. And since I was, at the time, interested also in caves, I go, what? Sinkholes? What's going on here? So I looked up the best maps available at the time, 1 to 250,000 to 1 maps. These are 6-mile squares, and this was the best, but it showed numerous potholes. So I spent a couple of years trying to get over to these. Winslow is up here. It's just south of Winslow, pretty much out in the middle of nowhere. I actually worked for the highway department for a while on a survey crew, and we surveyed this road. And I would sometimes spend my lunch hours trying to hike over to these craters, but I never quite managed to get there. It was 5 miles each way. So this project languished over the years, and it wasn't until about 1985, when I was living in Tucson now, and I went over, get a haircut, drove my truck over with, of course, a free Floyd Collins sticker on it. While I was getting my hair cut, all of a sudden all the barbers in the place ran out to look at some guy's truck out there. And they came back, and one of them goes, "Who's got that truck with that Floyd Collins sticker on it?" I go, "Well, that's me." And he came over and goes, "Do you know who Floyd Collins is?" He goes, "Yeah, it was a caver that got trapped in a cave in Kentucky." He goes, "No, my name's Floyd Collins." The guy who owns Gene's Barbershop is actually Gene Collins. His true name is Floyd Collins. He had never heard of the real Floyd Collins. So I got to introduce him to it, but he has a plethora of antiques in his barbershop. One of the things is a stack of old Arizona highways, and Arizona highways from the 1940s. And he showed me an article in there on Arizona's newest wonder. And this was an airline pilot by the name of Hollingswood, who, while flying back and forth for TWA, noticed these craters, wondered what formed them. He thought that they were formed by the meteors, and he put together the TWA Ford Motor Company expedition to go out and determine how these craters were formed. What they discovered was that no, they were not meteor craters. They were, just simple sinkholes. They decided that, where there's sinkholes, there's caves. They thought that these probably were caves of huge size, but they were unable to find any way in through the sinkholes into the caves. So I was intrigued, and again, my interest risen again to go out and actually see these. And just recently, I decided to go up and stand on a corner in Winslow, Arizona. Yeah, for a sinkhole to see. But well, once I'm up there, it's how do you get out to the sinkholes? The sinkholes are also known as the Macaulay sinks, but my wife and I tried driving out, and after about 25 miles of dirt roads, we came to a locked gate with a particularly unfriendly notice saying that, not only would, trespassers be shot, but, so we decided, no, we'll go around the other way. And we came in this way, drove in, and now discover that this whole area has been subdivided. It's all privately owned, and also ran into a rancher out there who said, a little bit more nicely that, we probably should get the hell out. But we managed to talk to him, and after about an hour's discussions, he allowed, okay, we could drive across his land and get nearer Clear Creek, or Chevelon Creek here, and see if we could find a way across. So this is where we drove in and then hiked in from here across, around out to some of these sinks. Now, this is about 1.5 miles. So the very largest sinks, like this one, is about 500 feet across and 300 feet wide. Smaller ones are only about 300 feet across, and they average about 100 feet deep. So we drove as far as we could, and then from there we took the trail across, which, as it says, is not maintained. In fact, hasn't been maintained in the last 70 years. Down to the bottom, and then you can see a little bit of the trail where it goes through on the other side in the snow. It's about 250-foot deep canyon here. And then once on the other side, we come up. This was the first sinkhole we came to. It's about 250 feet across. Fortunately, I brought along a standard Debbie, which is about 5'8", purely for scale. And this one is, as I said, about 250 feet across and about 60, 70 feet deep. This is one of the smallest ones, but it was the first sinkhole that we came to. And then as we moved along, we find some of the larger sinkholes. This one is probably 300 feet across. And let me see, somewhere in there, oh, whoops. There's a Debbie in there somewhere. A standard Debbie, yes. And then here we come to one of the larger sinks. This one's about 350 feet across, but this is at the end of a long line of sinks. There's actually 7 of these large sinks that recede off into the distance. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sinks at least in this arc. And these sinks are all in the Kaibab limestone, which in many places is very thick, but in this area, the Kaibab limestone is only about 60 feet thick. So Kaibab limestone is only down to about here. And then the bottoms of these sinks are all in coconino sandstone. Okay, here's another larger sink. I call this one of the double sinks. And this also has a standard Debbie in it. And there you can see, there's a standard Debbie on the other side of the sink, about 400 feet away. And this one's larger, it's about 100 feet deep.
Were you able to get into the bottom of any of them?
We did on some of the shallower ones, but we didn't go into the bottoms, although it would be essentially all of the ones we went to were walk-ins. You can see on the far side that you could just, essentially walk right down into them. We were more on the tourist trip to see as many sinkholes as we could, and you might look in the distance and see, when you're walking along in the flats, it's not always quite as obvious, A, where you are, and B, where the sinks are, even with a GPS. Okay, whoop. Working.
Yeah, if you click on it, it'll start going to loading.
Yeah, I'm also still looking around. If anybody has any caves that are, of suitable size for drones. This is that same large sink, about 400 feet across. It's a double sink because here is, And then this is the largest of the sinkholes. once again, we have a standard Debbie on the other side on there. This one is, the one that's 500 feet, 500 feet long and 300 feet wide. And well, I probably don't need to point Debbie out. You probably all see her over there. Yeah, there she is. So. And this is when we're leaving the area, looking back, and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sinkholes right here. There's about 35 or 40 sinkholes in the whole area. So, but it looks like right now the only reasonable access into this area is by hiking. So it limits a little bit on what you can accomplish. Well, the next thing is where do these things come from? There's been some study on them. Of course, what we like to hope for is that these are collapses into caves. Unfortunately, it seems like this is probably underneath the Kaibab and the Coconino are some supai type formations and also some salt beds. And over by Holbrook, the salt beds have been used as caverns dissolved out where they store natural gas. But here it's just been subsidence. And according to one study, what we're seeing here is this right here, and this is that arc of 7 sinkholes. But this is the center of it, and this is one ring, failure ring of collapse. And then this is a second larger ring of collapse. And there's even a third ring out here, which would be a little over a mile in diameter. And while we have 35 sinkholes here now, this is actually caused by one collapse. This is what the geologic cross-section looks like. Again, this is the Kaibab limestone. Up here, only about 60 feet thick. Then most of the collapse into the Coconino. And here are the halite salt beds. And way down here, Redwall limestone. But the collapse is happening up here, only about 1,000, 1,500 feet below the surface. So that's really, I think, all I have on this. Yep. So, any questions? Yes.
At the bottom of the beds, the sinkholes, are they solid to walk on, or is it water down there, or what has really moved?
Oh, it's solid. A lot of it is just sediments that have washed in, so that it's sandy, but drier. Actually, these concentrate water, and so that you do have more vegetation down in the bottoms of these. And you may have noticed on a couple of them, you could see trails going down into them, and those are animal trails that are going down getting water, I assume. So, yes, Don?
Yeah, there's a second set of those sinks called the snowflake sinks that are 20 miles, 25 miles further east. Very, very similar.
Yes, they are. Not quite as numerous or as large as these, but yeah, for a long time, I was confused as to the snowflake sinks versus the Macaulay sinks, whether they were actually separate or not. But there's the Macaulay sinks. Also, just south of the Macaulay sinks is what's called Richards Lake. And Richards Lake is a sinkhole that's a mile across. It's probably about, I think it's the biggest sinkhole I know of in Arizona. But again, it's because of subsidence from the salt being dissolved, not what we would like to consider real caves. Any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me? I think that they're forming very slowly. I don't know if we could go back at all. No. Okay. Oh. Well, yeah, one of the aerial photos. If you look at it, you see the ring of very distinct sinkholes there, but also there are very shallow sinks that are only 15, maybe 30 feet deep, but they might be 1,000 feet across. And so they're incipient sinkholes that are, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you see these sinkholes, very distinct, but here's another sink that's forming. This is also a large sink that's only 20, 30 feet deep. So this whole area, they're slowly forming. We're probably seeing sinkholes here that, are upwards 20,000 years, some of the oldest ones. That just a guess off the top of my head, but anything from 20,000 years to last year. So, any other questions? No? Well, okay.